The national chairman of the All Progressives Congress has asked senators-elect and members of the House of Representatives who won elections into the 10th National Assembly to get ready to serve the people to ensure a more productive nation. Abdullahi Adamu emphasized the need for teamwork, saying that the president-elect Bola Tinubu will need all the help he can get to assemble a team that will lead the country in the next 4 years.
We needed to make sure that everybody goes back home, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, and that it's not yet. We're not there yet, and we need to complete the victory and our joy, so to speak, on Saturday, and then we can now start talking about leadership of the National Assembly. And that's basically what it was about. If the president-elect was here, there would not have been any difference. The question about zoning was that let's tarry a while, let's leave everything for now until we finish the elections.
Appeal to the members of the National Assembly elect to play down the leadership issues and concentrate more in ensuring that we take the election battle to the end.
It's a family affair. This is not the right time to talk about zoning. All we need now is to consolidate on our victory. We have won the presidential, and we should be able to at least take a minimum of 30 states.
Right, joining us now, Senior Advocate of Nigeria West, Idahosa, and former Minority Whip of the House of Representatives. And we also have the Chairman of the African Bar Association, Samson Osagie. Thank you both of you gentlemen for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Let me start with you, West Idahosa. I mean, the 10th Assembly will be here by June of 2023. What kind of assembly are you looking forward to, considering the fact that, some may be coming back, a lot more are not coming back? Well, at least 13 governors will be making their way back to the National Assembly. What do you make of it?
Well, thank you. The country looks forward to a real National Assembly, one that can be regarded as the custos moral of the Nigerian people, the conscience of the nation. We didn't have that at all. It's not enough to win elections. I was in the House of Representatives for some time, and I worked very hard. You see, you find people just occupying spaces and not utilizing these spaces. In the end, they leave the business of lawmaking to the leadership to manipulate. Don't forget that leadership in African type of democracy, they are complacent. They are practically part of the executive. They are together. They are not likely to take out those far-reaching motions that are people-oriented. So it's important that those coming now must get ready to read. They must learn the business of making laws. The secret of successful lawmakers are in the books. They're in the rules and in the practice and convention of parliament worldwide. How can you say you are a lawmaker and you're not familiar with the rules of your business? You are not familiar with parliamentary conventions worldwide. So you have to understand that the only way to understand the power of the purse and how to filibuster, how to get executive, to get the scrutiny of the executive projects and the others is to know. Your knowledge is key. So I expect that rather than be talking about zoning at this stage, I'm glad to hear that they are ready to defer that. They are talking about winning the elections. As soon as they win the elections, they should go and get training. Too many newcomers are coming. In the House, for example, about 222. Many of them have never seen the votes and proceedings in their lifetime before.
Let me bring in Samson Osagie. Samson Osagie, you were former Minority Whip of the House of Representatives, and one of the key things West Idahosa raised here has to do with training, and he also spoke about the need for these people to be true representatives of the people. Take us through the rudiments of what it means being a lawmaker and a true representative of your people.
Well, thank you very much, Sulema. The learned senior advocate had laid the foundation for what every true lawmaker should look up to as they plan to join the parliament in the 10th Assembly. Being a lawmaker, like he said, is not enough to just win an elections. And the return rate has been quite low. This time around, it is not any better. We have too many young people I mean, too many, not too young, but greyhounds in parliamentary practices and procedures coming into the parliament. So they need to learn, they need to read, they need to understand the rudiments of parliamentary practices. First and foremost, I understand that the National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies, an institution set up by the National Assembly to assist the National Assembly to build capacity for both lawmakers and support staff, is already putting machinery in motion to ensure that the lawmakers that are coming in get the requisite first-hand training, in the art of the legislature. But the truth of the matter again must be said is that this 10th Assembly is coming in at a time where our country requires serious-minded persons in the business of governance. As we speak today, our economy requires a legislature that is proactive. Our country requires a legislature that is not just a rubber stamp, but an active participant in the art of governance. Because the legislature is the first organ of government. And thank to God that the president-elect is a former senator and the vice president-elect is a sitting senator. So they will understand when the parliament comes with serious issues of governance, bordering on the economy, on issues of constitution, on issues of obedience to the law and rule of law, on issues of obedience to court processes and court judgments, and so on and so forth. So in other words, those who are coming in must be ready to understand that their constituents requires their attention more than ever before. Governance and government must impart on the lives of the people, both economically, socially, and of course, politically. At the moment, we understand that the monetary policy of this present administration is affecting the mass of the people, in no small measure. And those are the issues that must be taken up almost immediately. It can require amendment of necessary legislations. Even the Central Bank Act needs to be looked at with a view to seeing a situation where the CBN governor cannot just wake up and throw a proposal to the president, that will affect the majority of the people. The issues of constitutional amendment that must lead to a restructuring of this country and devolution of powers to other organs of governments in order that governance can impart on the grassroots must be looked at. And I'm very sure that this should happen because it is expected that the president-elect, who has been an advocate of restructuring and true federalism, will understand if the parliament comes from this trajectory of legislative business.
Very good. Let me bring this back to you, West Idahosa. Let's talk about the issue of separation of powers, checks and balances, and some of the points raised there by Samson Osagie, talking about restructuring and other, legislation that need to be put in place as soon as possible, according to him. What is the ideal kind of relationship expected of the executive and the legislature, especially when you think about what happened with the 8th Assembly and then, of course, the 9th Assembly that was seen more or less as a rubber stamp, National Assembly. Speak to that and the issues, the laws that need to be put in place as quickly as possible by the 10th Assembly.
Well, I think the first thing is to aggregate the interests of the nation. Once you have the interest aggregation of Nigeria as a nation, and that you are just a constituent representative of your area, you would then understand that the overall purpose of government is to promote the greatest number of people and project their happiness. So I think that it's easy for the legislature to work with the executive once they identify and articulate the position of the government. For example, if the government wants to promote restructuring, there's no reason why the legislature should be a clog in the wheel of that. That means that they have to agree, they have to have sessions, conferences, they have to carry them along, they have to interact, they have to exchange views, and then the rationale must be clear to both sides. And then a strategy is worked out for both sides to come together and agree that this is a task that must be done. And now once that is there, 2/3 in both houses become almost a given because there is consensus at them. There is a meeting of the mind. And then again, the other point one must know is that respect is reciprocal in the business of separation of powers. No matter how much you may wield executive powers, remember also they wield the power of the purse in the legislature. The judiciary wields the power of justice. So there must be an interface of all the powers so that you can have a harmony like the type produced by the white and black keys of a piano, so that it can be interesting and forward-looking. I think that once we understand that, working together becomes, a very easy order.
On the issue of legislation, I'd like you to also address that because, Mr. Osagie pointed out a few. Yeah. What kind of laws would you like to see in place? For example, there's the gender bills that were rejected by the 9th Assembly. Is that something you think should be revisited? And which other laws, in your opinion?
I think the gender bill should be revisited because that's fundamentally based on equality, equity, and justice. And it's going nationwide. It's been a clamor by all our women. But beyond Nigeria, you have countries like Spain and many others that have constitutionalized it. So that's something that I think that should be one of the early bills that should be reconsidered. Then, of course, the question of how we relate together financially as a nation. What do the states get from the federation? What do they put in? And how the federal resources are disposed and dealt with is very important. And then again, how do we operationalize our armed forces? How are they used for the good of our nation? Because these are component parts that are key to make the federation a peaceful place to work in. So I believe that these are some of the areas that the new assembly will be looking at.
Okay, let me come to Samson Osagie, and it's a question that I really would want also West Idahosa to weigh in. We're talking about a fractured nation, a people that are divided at this point in time. It brings us to leadership and how we can achieve some of the key things you both have highlighted. Help us make sense of what the leadership maker should look like as we move into the 10th Assembly in a nation begging for some kind of healing.
Yes, there is no doubt that our nation craves for healing in almost every facet of our national life, socially, politically, economically, and we need to heal in terms of the kind of divisions and the divisiveness that have been promoted, mainly by political interest. And I think we have no choice. The leaders that are emerging today must try as much as possible to promote policies. It's not just by speaking to them. It's by implementing policies that will give confidence to the people, in the government that have been put in place. I also think that the challenges besetting our country today, especially the issues of insecurity, the issues of economy, which has traumatized our people and put them in a situation where earning a living has become so difficult, must be addressed. Because the truth must be said, Section 14 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria makes it clear. And I think that is the first et origo of the functions of government. And that is to the effect that the welfare and security of the people is the primary responsibility of government. And I believe that any government that is able to achieve this or work towards achieving the welfare and security of the large number of people of this country would have succeeded in promoting the healing process of this country. Because what do our people actually need? They need peace and security. They need to have economic opportunities to be able to earn a living. And that is the basic things of life that they require. And it is the responsibility of government to promote the enabling environment for all of this to happen. And I believe that the healing process begins with getting policies and strategies in place that enables the citizens to have security and then promote the opportunity for them to earn a living. So this is the only way our government can ensure that our citizens have confidence in them, and then unity becomes a given issue at the end of the day. We can preach unity and mount it from now to 100 years to come. But if government does not put in place the enabling environment and infrastructures and policies that are implemented to meet the needs of the people, security and welfare of the people, then you cannot be talking about unity. And then government must be fair and must be just in all its activities. And that means that justice and fairness will promote peace at the end of the day. And these are basic requirements
if you
of
don't
the
mind.
Constitution for any government.
Okay, I get the point now. Let me bring it back now here to West Idahosa. And we're talking about, you both are a gift to the Nigerian people, talking about legislative matters. And we should be asking questions as the kind of intrigue, because for the first time in a long time, we're seeing what I will call a rainbow coalition of political parties in this assembly. Help us make sense of the intrigues that will bring about the leadership, West Idahosa, if you don't mind.
Well, of course, you see there are about 7 to 8 political parties that are now sending their representatives to the assembly, and that will mean that there will have to be some level of rainbow coalition. For example, in the House of Reps, you will find very clearly that the opposition party put together right now is slightly ahead of the ruling party, the APC. So the dynamics that will then play out will mean that you need them to be able to elect a leader. If you do not carry them along, they can pose a challenge. Come together and push that challenge, and then eventually do not be surprised if they get the numbers, they take over the presiding officership seat of that house. So you need to be able to reassure them and let them understand that you are working together for the good of the nation. That's one. And of course, we expect the leadership to remember that it must promote national solidarity, national unity. It must also represent experience, whether we like it or not. You can't have the blind leading the blind. We need that hands-on right now, from the best hands that we can, much as we talk about federal character or zoning as they now locally call it. It must not be blind.
Right. Let's talk about zoning, because that's a word that's already rearing its head as a few of those contenders who've been named, Lawan, for example, Kalu, Jibrin Akpabio, Shomole, Yari Umahi, eye the top job of the Senate. What factors do you think will stand for or against any of these contenders? Let me bring it to Samson Osagie.
Well, from experience, I know that political parties have roles to play in the emergence of presiding officers and leaders of parliament. Normally, in the interest of balancing equity and justice and fairness to the respective political configurations in the country, there will be need to disseminate the various top offices in the country so that each of the zones will be represented in the first 4 or 5 offices in the country. Now, but the Constitution makes it clear that either the Senate or the House of Reps, their members shall elect from among themselves. It did not state from which zone. So it is the responsibility of members of the House of Reps or members of the House of Senate to elect their leaders, and that means from whichever zone they find that leader fit to hold the position. It has happened even in the 7th and in the 8th Assembly. Now, but the point is, the political party have a strong role to play. If they are able to muster enough numbers and give convincing argument to their members to stick to the zoning arrangement for the political party. So a lot depends on how much each of the political party, particularly the ruling party that has majority of members, how much they are able to convince majority of their members, and how much the candidate themselves are able to reach out to the various members of the opposition parties to garner their support. So at the end of the day, when it comes to electing leadership in the parliament, particularly in the National Assembly, nothing is usually cast on stone, as experience have shown in the past. So, and of course, we must not forget that in electing presiding officers of the National Assembly, there is always the issue of experience. And of course, we talk about being a ranking member or a ranking senator, as the case may be in the parliament. So it depends on what the members of the parliament wants and how much their respective political parties, particularly the party with the majority of seats is able to muster in terms of getting the right person to be the leader or be among the leaders of the various houses of
Idahosa, I'm sure you want to weigh in on this, especially when you remember or recall the events that led to the emergence of Senate President Bukola Saraki in the 8th Assembly. A lot of intrigues. Is that likely to play out as we expect the 10th Assembly to, take over?
Well, the risk of that is not as strong in the Senate as it could be in the House of Representatives. Because from the interaction we have had, it looks like the opposition parties seem to be already putting their heads together and thinking about the fact that, look, if we have the numbers, nothing stops us. And the recent example of the United States, where you had about 5 to 6 ballots to become speaker, has encouraged them because the challenge came from the opposition.
Right.
And so they now understand that, as Samson said, nothing is cast in stone. So most significantly, the charisma and the quality of the candidate to be presented by the ruling party is key.
Let me stop. Let me jump in there quickly here. You know the game here now. We have a president from Southwest.
Yeah.
And we have a speaker who is also from Southwest.
Yeah.
So
you have a president-elect.
President-elect from Southwest.
Yes.
So the key question now is that are we likely to see the speaker, be a floor or an ordinary member leaving his speakership position?
In the next dispensation. Right.
Well, the thing is, it's most unlikely that he can maintain the seat of the speaker. Because the president-elect is not only from the Southwest, it's from Lagos State. The gentleman is from Lagos State. That would be a tough order to call.
And we can't let both of you go without asking the Edo politics. And let's start again first quickly here. Elections will be held this Saturday in Edo State with the exception of the governorship, but the legislative election will also hold. Keep in mind the politics that has gone down in Edo, Samson Osagie, with a minority number of people running the assembly to this moment. Makes sense for Nigerians what the people may expect in this Saturday election.
Well, like you said, that's quoting you now. The minority have taken over the Assembly of Edo State for the last almost 4 years, and that is an aberration and against the spirit and letters of Section 91 of the Constitution. On March 18, 2023, it is expected that the Edo people will again reaffirm the fact that they desire a legislature wherein every segment of that state will be represented in that House of Assembly. Because it is an anomaly for a state to run without a legislature wherein all the constituent parts of that state are represented in the lawmaking organ. It is an anomaly. Unfortunately for Edo, we have had to live with that in the past almost 4 years. But in the next election, I am very sure that the Edo people will speak very loudly and committedly to the fact that they are ready to elect their people. Regardless of party lines, they will elect their representative. And it is hoped that this time around, those who are elected will have the privilege and opportunity and the rare constitutional opportunity to be sworn into the House of Assembly to perform their constitutional mandate of representing and oversighting the executive arm of government.
At West Idahosa, before we let both of you go, let's talk about Ahmed Lawan. Back to the issue of who may emerge Senate president. I mean, he's still very much there. What kind of picture really would it paint, considering the issue of same-faith ticket? It's on the one hand, I mean, the president-elect is Muslim, the present Senate president is Muslim. And of course, just like, Sulai asked earlier, what are the chances of him retaining his job as Senate president? What would that even look like? Or, as some are saying, the ideal situation would be for Tinubu to just, leave the race open and allow the best man to emerge.
Well, the thing is, he's from Northeast, and the Senate president is a major office, the vice president is a major office, and Northeast shouldn't have those 2 slots. That's number one. The second point that I would like to make is, remember there's been so much hullabaloo about the same faith stuff. And they are both Muslims. And I think that there should be some level of national reconciliation. There should be some level of demonstration above schisms like religion and the rest of them. I think more importantly, the zoning should reflect first a representation of the 6 major geopolitical zones. I do not expect that 2 major offices will go to one zone. So I expect that the president-elect should be in front, leading equity, leading national solidarity, leading the reconciliation process. So get the big 6 zones as they exist today to get the big offices. And thereafter, you can begin to fill the plug the loopholes.
Right.
But to say that Lawan should be retaining his seat, that would look to me like overloading that area, considering its demographics and the fact that there is a need right now to bring the country together.
Right.
Quickly here, before we go, West Idahosa, it looks like the game of chess where you sacrifice the queen or you sacrifice the bishop. Now, do you see a political sacrifice for the speakerships? Because one of the highlights Ngozi painted is also looking at the speaker, who is from Lagos State and also a Muslim politician.
How is that likely to play out?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, the thing is, the speaker is from Lagos State, is from where the president-elect comes, and so, again, he is an extremely qualified person to be speaker, but Nigeria is not an ideal country for the Pullman. There's a lot of political arithmetics to ensure national stability. So we need that now.
All right, it will be a great balancing act for the president-elect as he takes over May 29. West Idahosa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, former lawmaker, thank you very much for joining us. Samson Osagie, Chairman, African Bar Association. It's been a delight having both of you, gentlemen.